As always, folks, we do record our lessons. As you're new to working with myself, if you haven't done yet, if you want to write down my email address if you haven't got it, it's Anthony or Anthony.Milner@jga-group.co.uk, and my mobile number is 07823 352 029. If you're ill and can't attend the lesson, or you're struggling to log in because of like Teams won't let you in, just send me a text to let me know, hey, Ann, I'm struggling to log in. I'll be there in a minute, or something like that. Now, our safeguarding officer is Paula Wakelin. So if you or someone you know is at risk, you can raise your concerns and make a referral to Paula at safeguarding@jga-group.co.uk. And Paula is also your learner progress advisor. So you will receive an email, if you haven't yet, from Paula asking you for your first learner progress advisor meeting. And that's just reminding me something I need to write down. So, yeah. Okay. And as always, folks, JGA are on social media, and I'm going to repeat it every lesson now, folks. Create yourself a LinkedIn and connect with other photographers and marketing people. Okay. You never know what's going to happen with your career. And first of all, if you connect with marketers, then you can actually publicize you as a photographer in the future. And the other one is if you connect with loads of photographers, you then get to see where the jobs are. Okay. So for instance, I've connected with 4,000 photographers. It sounds quite a lot, but I've just been doing it as and when. And what then happens is I see the jobs popping up all the time. Okay. Where if I didn't, I wouldn't see them because they're not on the likes of Indeed or Reed. Okay. So highly recommend that you connect with other photographers on LinkedIn. Like I will show it, or we can go through it again if you want me to show you how you use LinkedIn. Okay, let's flick through to where we are today. Okay, so it's actually the second lesson. Okay, folks. Now, with your cameras, a lot of people at the beginning struggle with the metering modes, and it's because they put the cameras on the wrong metering modes. Now, when you get your camera, if you put the camera, if you put your camera to your eye, you might not have your cameras with you today. If you point your camera to your eye and you press on the focus button, okay, what will happen is you'll see little red dots or little circles or little squares. Okay, have you seen that before, folks, when you look through your camera? Now, what that does is that reads the light in your camera and what you're photographing. Okay, and it also focuses. Now, the camera or cameras now have AI built into them, so they can work. A lot of them can work out it's a face or where the eyes are. My camera is a mirrorless camera, so it roughly finds the eyes every time. Okay, but when I used to have a digital SLR, can you see this little section, this little thing here? It goes up, left, right, up and down, left and right. Okay. Now, I don't have my camera on where it shows me like 30 little red dots, let's say. Okay. I have it so it's one dot. And then I move the dot around so it's on the eye every time. Does that make sense, folks? I'll just repeat that. I have it so it doesn't show me like two dots, a large square or a large rectangle or anything like that, or lots of little red dots. I have it so it only gives me one little red dot because Nikon does a dot. And then what I do is I move that little dash up, that little circle thing, up, down, left, and right, and I put it on the eye. Now I've been doing this now for 25 years. If you think I'm doing a wedding and I'm going, literally, what photograph. I'm that quick. I do it that I'm so used to doing it. And like Libby, if you're doing wedding photography, you know like how fast you've got to be when you're doing the reportage. Okay, but that's called spot metering. Okay, that is called spot metering. And if you go into your camera settings, you can change it. Now, the problem is with a lot of cameras, especially when you buy them brand new. So like Rafi, when you buy your camera, it'll have it on the what's what I want to use, like the starter settings. Okay. And the first thing I would do is I would change it so it's on one dot and then you move it round. Now, if I'm doing architecture, let's say, I choose exactly where I want my dot to be. So it might be in the middle of the picture, it might be the door. If I'm photographing food, I will point the spot exactly where I want the dot to be. I don't want the camera kind of working out where it's going to go, because that's what it does. It kind of goes, oh, I'm gonna spot myself here. And then you're like, yeah, but I don't want let's say I'm photographing a plate of Sunday roast. Well, I don't want it on the spuds, on the potato. I want it nice and sharp I'm using a lower aperture. So what I do want is I want the meat to be sharp. Okay, does that make sense? So literally I choose exactly where I want it. Now, if you're struggling to change your metering mode, quite frankly, Google it and YouTube it. Okay, because all cameras are a little bit different. But if you are struggling with it, let me know and I can help you. Okay. Now let's say like Brooke, you'll be photographing babies and you're going to be photographing family portraits. Okay. So with that, you want to focus on the eyes every time. Okay. And if you're photographing a family, you've got, let's say, mum and dad in the middle, and then you've got the kids in the front, or you've got the kids on the side, you always focus on the person in the middle. Okay. But what you don't want is the camera then going, hey, I'm going to focus on the little child next to it, because the depth of field will be wrong and mum and dad might be blurred, or the kid on the far corner is blurred. Yeah. Now, if we can see my slide here, folks, I'm just going to go through this. Now, what it also does, it also reads the amount of light in your shot, and we're going to watch a video in a minute, and it can actually cause, pardon me, a bit of an issue to do with the light metering, but you don't really notice it. Okay, but I'm just going to explain it. Okay, so spot metering only measures the intensity of the light over a small circular area in the center of the viewfinder. The average is then calculated by measuring just 2 to 4% of the whole picture. Okay, now bear in mind, my family portrait studio was just a perfectly white background, and then I had my subject in the middle. I never noticed any difference to the colors or the depth of light. Okay, so I know what it's saying. The average is then calculated, but it doesn't really make a difference. Okay, partial metering. As you see with spot metering, it's just metering it in one specific place, and I can move that dot all the way around. Okay. Partial metering. This mode measures the intensity of the light over a larger circular area, as shown here, than the actual spot mode. The average is then calculated by measuring 8 to 13% of the picture area. Okay. So let's say your subject you were focusing it in the middle. It's then going to calculate the light in 18 to 30% of the whole area and then average it. Okay. Center weighted. This light metering mode measures the light across the whole picture area, but strongly bases the reading to the center of the viewfinder area. Unlike the evaluative one, which we're going to read in a minute, it does not take the focus into account, so uses the same averaging pattern for every shot. That would work probably quite well if you were doing landscapes, but if you're doing product photography, or there's difference in the backgrounds, that's not really going to work very well. Then we have evaluative metering. The default metering mode on digital SLRs. So, Rafi, are you getting a mirrorless camera, Rafi, or a digital SLR? You're getting mirrorless. Okay. So, folks, if you've got a digital SLR camera and you'll notice in your camera the red dots are appearing kind of near enough all over, it's because it's on evaluative metering. The only option, if you choose one of the basic automatic exposure modes, measures light across the whole frame, but strongly bases the reading to the area around the autofocus point currently being used, e.g. over here. So what I would recommend you do, folks, is I would put it on spot metering. Now, if you have a mirrorless camera, and I did this the other day, my camera finds the eye. It's meant to find the eye 96% of the time. Okay? Because of AI. I don't have to move the dot round. Okay? It shows me. That I had to change the setting. It's not on spot metering. It's on, and I had to change it because it was a right pain in the bum. I tested it last week. Just show you. I had to turn it. Oh, can you see it? Can you see it now? So if I move it further over, it will say spot metering. I can do it by hand. There we go. There we go. They call it pin mode. You can see it or not. Basically, it's a little spotlight they've got there. But then, for me to get the actual mode to work, so I could actually get the camera to work with the eye. Oh, it's not very easy on the screen. How to work in a second, I don't know. Anyway, it's a little rectangle. Okay, and I had to YouTube it. But when I'll be doing my product photography this weekend, I'll put it straight back onto spot metering and use it as I always do. Okay. These cameras now are like mini computers. That's the way I look at them now. They're like mini computers. So there's different settings for different things. Okay. There is something you can also do, and I need to actually put it in one of the slides, and I'll mention it in one of the slides later. And another day, I don't want to go into too much detail. What you can do, which is pretty cool, on your spot metering, you can make it a color. And what I mean by that, if you're doing product photography, so Rafi, this could be for you, you can do it, you can put like this color mode on, and it shows red, yellow, blue, or green. You choose what color you want, and it shows exactly where the focal point is. So you're not just pointing at it and then kind of going, that'll be okay. It actually shows you like little dots of where the actual focal point is. That there's a proper name for it, and someone showed me a couple of years ago, and I saw it in a video the other day. I need to create a lesson slide. I'll mention it in the next lesson. Okay, but I think for product photography, that's going to be a massive help. Libby and Brooke, you wouldn't need it for photographing people. Okay, so let's go on to the next slide. Okay, so spot metering, the crash course. Okay, let's watch a video on it. Okay, just put the sound on for you. Now, the reason I'm actually just showing you this for, folks, is because if you get your spot metering right, it makes your life so much easier. And when I've been working with young photographers in the past, so many get it wrong at the beginning because their spot metering is incorrect. And so many of them are sitting there saying, oh, well, 10% of my pictures are blurred, or 30% of my pictures are blurred. Can you imagine having 30% of your pictures blurred, Libby, at a wedding? Or when you do your family portraits, Brooke, if your 30% of your pictures are blurred. It's just because they've got the spot metering incorrect. Okay. But it takes a little bit of time to get used to actually moving the focal point around. Then it becomes second nature of using a digital SLR. Libby, how have you got your focal point?
What metering setting?
Yeah.
I have it on the spot as well.
You have it on spot, yeah.
And it's just like a touch screen that you can move around.
So okay, yeah. So okay, I've got touchscreen on mine now, and I can just go like that. But
Yeah.
okay, are you a photographer or you're a videographer? Do you have your camera to your eye, or are you one of these people who kind of have it look at like that?
Yeah, I look at it like that, but I know I
Oh,
shouldn't.
you Wally! Oh my
I
God, we've got
know.
a videographer in the room with us. Put it to your eye. You're a photographer.
Yes, I'll start doing that. I'll start doing that.
God. I'll tell you what it is. It's about being taken seriously as a photographer. Okay, if you've got the camera to your eye, okay, I can still see what's going on because I'm using this side here, and I can still see if someone's like coming near me or anything. I can still see it, but
Mm.
everything's in here. Now, the thing is, a digital SLR, okay, you're using mirrorless, I imagine.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So digital SLR cameras, if any of you using digital SLR cameras, it's not the actual size to the screen on here. Okay, mirrorless is. So mirrorless shows exactly what's on the image. Digital SLR, it cuts a bit off. But if you look through the viewfinder, digital SLR is actually exactly what it is. So when I photograph jewelry, and I might want to make sure that I'm photographing I've got a nice necklace, but I want the diamond right at the bottom, let's say, and I'm focusing the digital SLR on the bottom, on the actual main screen, I don't get it. But in the viewfinder, I do. Okay. But yeah, Libby, don't have your camera plumbing like that. You look like a bleeding Wallyman. Be a photographer, be proud. We're not videographers, we're photographers. Okay. Brooke, how do you do it? Family portraits? I'm not gonna have another Wally, am I?
To your eye.
TI, you're a legend. Okay. And then Sarah and Rafi, you're just starting, aren't you? So you just kind of, but yeah, don't have your camera like that. It's not photographers. You have to speak to your boss about this, Libby. If you're still doing that when you go through to EPA, I'm not putting you through. Okay, I'm only taking a minute. I've still got to put you through. But yeah, don't. Okay, so but it's really important that if you get it, you'll get 99% of your pictures sharp every time because you're telling the camera exactly where the focal point is. I am finding it really weird with my mirrorless now where it finds the eye for me. And when I actually photographed the event for JGA last week, if I'm honest with you, I get a bit bored. So I just take my camera and then I go around photographing people and everyone and they like it. They use it for publicity. And it just gets me instead of sat on my bum all day, I actually take a few pictures. But so it's the first time I've used this on the mirrorless, where literally the camera I've got it on the correct settings, but it still didn't get the eye right. If I had three or four people on a table, it wouldn't always go to the exact person I wanted it to, and it's kind of like the person in the middle. So if you think like Brooke, you're photographing families, it's not going. It might focus on the kid next. So this is meant to be a £3,500 camera body, what it is, and I'm not jumping for joy, but the focal point now to go up, down, left, and right, it's a little bit slow compared to my digital SLR. So I'm not 100% happy with it. Anyway, let's move on. Let's watch this video. Okay, if you can't hear the sound, folks, let me know. Okay. Anyone hear the sound?
Hey everyone, Steve from Backcountry Gallery here, and this time let's talk spot metering. In my experience, both in one-on-one conversations and in workshops, I've discovered that spot metering is one of the most misunderstood metering patterns and that most people are actually using it wrong. Let's take a look at how it really works and when to use it. But before we jump in, remember that if you would like to continue to see content like this, make sure you hit the like button and subscribe. Now, hold your breath. This is going to be a deep dive. Spot meter size and position. First, what is spot metering? Spot metering takes a meter reading off of a very small portion of the frame, ignoring the rest. I'd love to give you the specifics, but the size of the spot meter area varies quite a bit between brands and even sometimes between cameras within that brand. As a very general guideline, the typical spot metering area is usually about 1.5% of the viewfinder to 5% of the viewfinder, although some cameras allow you to customize the size and go significantly larger than that. Next is spot meter position, and that, once again, can vary wildly. Some cameras, like Nikon, link spot metering to the active AF point. Others spot meter only from the center. Still others, like some Canon and Sony models allow you to link the AF points as an option. Once again, there's just too many brands and models to cover them all, so consult your owner's manual to see your options. That said, if you are a Nikon shooter, make sure you check out my exposure and metering book for Nikon. It does cover all of this in much greater detail. Now, there is a pitfall here too. If you do link your AF points to the spot meter area, or if they are permanently linked like we have with Nikon, it's easy to fall into the trap of thinking the spot meter area is the same size as an AF point, and that's usually not the case. Here's an approximation with a typical Nikon DSLR. As you can see, the spot meter is significantly larger than the AF point. One way to sort of get a feel for this is to spot meter off of a plain background with a strong light source in it. Move the spot meter towards the light source and note when the light source starts to influence the meter. At any rate, the biggest place the spot meter size gets you into trouble is if you think the spot meter is much smaller than it really is, and it's seeing a lot of the background, and maybe that background happens to be really bright or really dark. I used this image in my last video covering Nikon metering tips, but it applies here as well. In this case, the spot meter would see a lot of background behind the bird, and because that background is dark, it would likely result in an overexposure. How the spot meter thinks. One of the biggest problems with spot metering is that when people first discover it, they believe they just struck photographic gold. Put the spot meter on your subject and you'll get a perfect exposure every time, right? Plus, with most cameras, you can link spot metering to the AF point, so as long as your AF point is on the subject, which, you know what, usually is, metering becomes a non-issue, right? If that's how you perceive spot metering, you're not alone. In fact, from my own experience, you're actually in the majority. However, I have some bad news. That's not how it works. What spot metering does is to try to render the brightness level of whatever is under the metering area a perfect middle tone, like this gray card you see here. If your subject happens to have about that same amount of reflectance as that gray card, you're golden, and luckily that's often the case for the wildlife photographers that frequent this channel. However, if your subject happens to reflect more or less than the gray card, you can run into trouble. To illustrate this point, I did a simple little setup in my backyard with 3 different metering targets. One was white, one was black, and one was gray. Then I spot metered off of each one and took a photo. Let's look at the results. Okay, so our first shot here is just of a gray card taped to a little sign I made. And in this case, f11 ISO 400 is what I picked. I had the camera in aperture priority, so it picked 1/25 of a second, and it resulted in a perfect exposure. It was a cloudy day, so the sky should be white like that. The goldenrod looks good, the vegetation looks good, and more importantly, the histogram looks good. So using a middle tone target with a spot meter results in a perfect exposure. Not a big surprise there. Now let's look what happens with the black target. When I taped the black target there and did the exact same thing, again, letting the camera do its thing, 1/30th of a second. That's a 2-stop overexposure when I was trying to meter off of this darker target, this black target. Finally, we have our white target, and as you can see, that resulted in a severe underexposure. We're at 1/640th of a second, which is 2.3 stops darker than it should be, so the white target was not doing us any favors when we were spot metering.
I just want to make the point with this bit. He's basically got his camera on auto. And what did I teach you in the first lesson? Manual. Okay. So if you have your camera on like shutter speed priority, which I had last week, this would count. But if you're doing it manually, you wouldn't get this because it wouldn't be too dark and it wouldn't be too light because you're changing the shutter speed so you get the correct meter reading. Does that make sense, folks? Yeah.
So obviously sticking our spot metering area on our target is not a surefire way to guarantee we'll have a perfect exposure every time. The trick here is that our spot meter has no idea what it's looking at. All it can do is render whatever is under it as middle tone. When you feed it something like a black sheet of paper, it sees very low reflectance. So just ask yourself, if you wanted to brighten a black piece of paper enough to turn it middle gray and your only tool was light, what would you do? You'd add more light, right? On the other hand,
so when the
spot meter sees white, it sees a lot of reflectance. So once again, how would you make something white into middle tone gray if your only tool was light intensity? Exactly. You take light away, and that's exactly what the spot meter is doing here. In fact, if we convert our images to black and white and compare the target area in each photo, we discover that they are all rendered as middle tone. And yes, the black target does have some texture to it, but you can see that the tonalities are all the same. Of course, the tonalities that fall in between these extremes of black and white we just saw will be closer to rendering a correct exposure, but they will never be perfect unless they are reflecting the same light as a middle tone target. Now that we know that the spot meter is always trying to make whatever is under it middle tone, we can use that to our advantage. Using the spot meter, middle tones. Once you know how the spot meter thinks, using it is pretty straightforward. The simplest way to use it is to meter off of a middle-toned area of the scene that's in the same light as your subject. Or if your subject is actually middle tone, like many of my wildlife subjects, you can just actually meter right off of them. If you're in an auto exposure mode, once you have a good meter reading, use your auto exposure lock button to hold the exposure as you shoot if necessary. Be careful here too. If you don't lock in your exposure and you happen to recompose, the spot meter will take a reading from the new location, and that can cause a change in exposure depending on where it lands. The good news is that most cameras will have some sort of AE lock button, or at least allow you to program a button for AE lock. By the way, if your AE lock button also locks in focus, you may want to change it to just AE lock. That way, once the exposure is locked, you can still change focus if necessary. Of course, if you're in full manual mode, just meter off a middle tone area that's in the same light as your subject, or the subject itself if that subject happens to be middle tone. Then set your exposure so your meter is zeroed out and fire away. In fact, full manual mode is my preferred exposure mode whenever I'm using a spot meter. By the way, many cameras allow you to assign spot metering to a custom button. This comes in really handy for when you need it in a hurry, and I do recommend that you go ahead and set that if you have it as an option. Spot metering without a middle tone area. So what happens if you want a spot meter but you can't find one of those handy middle tone targets to meter off of that I keep talking about? Simple. Meter off of anything and then just compensate. Since we understand how the spot meter thinks, it's easy to know when it's likely to make a mistake. For example, if we meter off of a white subject, like our target from earlier, we know 100% that it's going to underexpose. That doesn't mean we can't meter off that target, it just means that we have to outthink the meter. We know that when it sees the white target, it's going to decrease exposure to make it middle gray. In this case, the white paper is about 2 1/3 stops brighter than middle tone. So to use it as a metering target, all I have to do is add 2 1/3 stops to my exposure. If I'm in an auto exposure mode, I can use exposure compensation. If I'm in manual, I can just make sure my meter is indicating a 2.3 stop overexposure. When I snap the photo with the exposure adjusted to compensate for the spot meter's underexposure, I get a perfectly exposed image as you see here. For this example, I added 2.3 stops to my exposure compensation while in aperture priority, and then it just popped off the shot. No surprise, the camera picked the same 1/25 of a second that it used when shooting that gray card. By the way, that 2.3 stop difference will apply across the board if we want to use the white target for metering. I could take that white target anywhere, meter off of it, add 2.3 stops, and get a perfect exposure every time. And of course, the same works for darker subjects, just in reverse. We dial in under exposure, as shown with this image here. The trick to really getting the most from your spot meter is to learn what middle tone looks like and knowing how much to compensate when you can't meter off of a middle tone target. One great way to shorten that learning curve is to simply walk around your neighborhood or even your backyard, spot meter objects of varying tonality, compensate for those tonalities, pop off a shot, and see how close you are to a proper exposure, and you can verify that with your histogram. With a little practice, you'll be able to spot meter off of any target, compensate if needed, and get a perfect exposure every time. So far, we've been metering just single tonalities, but keep in mind, you'll often encounter mixed tonalities like we have here with this toucan. When this happens, the spot meter basically averages everything out, and depending on the situation, it often actually works well. In this case, we have the dark eye, beak, and a little black feather area under the spot meter, but that's offset by the lighter than middle tone yellow area. Everything is lighter or darker than middle tone, but they all balance out for a good exposure. Where you can get into trouble here is if you have mixed tonalities under the spot meter, but as a group, all of those tonalities are either lighter than or darker than middle tone, then you'll need to compensate. When to use and not use spot metering. At this point, you may be wondering if you should use spot metering all the time, part-time, or not at all. Well, only you can decide that. I'll tell you what I do. Personally, for my wildlife work, Matrix gets it right most of the time. I can show you shot after shot after shot where Matrix just nailed it. No muss, no fuss. For a typical scene like you see in these images, it just works. The thing is, spot metering requires a bit more work on my part, and I tend to go the quickest route I can most of the time, and Matrix gets it close enough in the majority of cases. As a side note, I also tend to avoid combining spot metering with action and auto exposure. It's just too easy for the spot meter to slip off an active target onto a background that would ruin the exposure. Now, let's look at a few examples of when I typically turn to my spot meter. The first hint that I may want a spot meter is that I'm facing a contrasty scene with lots of light and dark areas. When you're dealing with splotchy light like that, the matrix and multi-pattern meters of the world are often too hit and miss, getting it right on one shot and then messing it up on the next one. If I have a lot of mixed light in a scene, I'll consider spot metering the target, setting in the correct exposure using the techniques we just covered, and then locking it in. From there, I can fire away, and as long as the light doesn't change, I'll get great exposures shot after shot. Another pair of common scenarios where I turn to spot metering are scenes with strong backlight and scenes with a bright subject against a really dark background. In these scenarios, matrix and multi-pattern metering will often be fooled by the background and give us an unsatisfactory exposure for our subject. For example, take this kingfisher. It's against an incredibly dark background and matrix metering completely blew it out. Spot metering the bird produced a much more accurate result. Same applies to this baboon with a bright light behind him. It was a nightmare for matrix metering, but spot metering right on the eyes.
So I just want to just mention this bit here. Spot metering, if you think you're doing, let's say like Brooke, you're doing family portraits and you're using a white background, if you used a matrix, which you were showing in the last one, it wouldn't work it out correctly. But you put on spot metering on the eye, it works out, but there's the highlight behind it, which you'd have your studio lights lighting your white background. Okay, so
rendered a good exposure for the monkey. Spot metering is also handy in even light, where the subject is middle tone, but the rest of the scene is like really dark or really light. Winter snow scenes are a great example of this, since matrix and segmented metering tend to underexpose in that scenario. For this dove, there was a lot of snow in the scene, and the camera wanted to underexpose. Spot metering for the dove rendered a proper exposure. Of course, I could also get the same result with matrix or multi-pattern metering and a little exposure compensation too. So the trick is you just got to pick which seems best for the situation at hand. The real key to becoming proficient with a spot meter is just to go out and practice. You won't always be perfect, but you can definitely get to the point where you're very close most of the time. Also, if you're a Nikon shooter, check out my ebook, Secrets.
So generally, he's a nature photography. The reason I like the video was a little bit I can question it. So as he mentioned at the very end, strong backlight. That would be basically for Brooke and Rafi. Brooke, you'll be probably photographing in a white background studio. Rafi, you'll be photographing products on a white background. Yeah, that's why spot metering would work, and the matrix wouldn't, because it wouldn't give you the correct metering. But you also meant now also I think Libby, for you photographing weddings, you don't know from 1 second you're turning in a shadowy area to a bright area. The matrix would work for some of them, but wouldn't work for anything with too much of a highlight, and you never know what you're going to get. So I was always taught just to keep it on spot metering. Okay, and then the same yourself, Sarah. You'll be doing events, let's say, and if you photograph, let's say, in a sports hall, loads of light, and then you turn around and there'll be loads of highlight behind people, where other areas you're going to have shadowy areas. It'd probably suit more architecture, to be honest, for me, matrix, but I've always just kept it on spot metering. Okay, so let's move on to the next bit. Now, have you seen this picture before on a camera, where it's got auto, it's got manual, shutter speed, aperture, and portrait? You've then got, you don't see it on so many cameras now, but there's a little flower, there's the landscape mountain shot, there's a nighttime, it looks like a little moon, and then it's got a person, and then it's got a running. You generally don't need to use those at all now, minus really your manual mode and your shutter speed mode. Now, if I just go through these, okay. So I mentioned earlier on manual mode is 90% of my work. If I have a mirrorless camera, I would now put it on shutter speed priority, put the ISO on auto, and this feels like I'm cheating. Put the camera on shutter speed priority. I would choose my shutter speed, so 200 for the second, and the camera will choose the aperture for me every time. So last week, when I was photographing the JGA event, I put it on shutter speed priority. Again, 200 for the second, so it's fast enough. And then the camera shows the aperture, and I was being a paparazzi photographer. Libby, what settings do you put your cameras on?
What, like in what sort of situation?
When you're doing your wedding paparazzi stuff?
Well, we usually keep it on quite a low aperture because we like the low depth of field.
Okay. Also a lower aperture.
So
okay,
yeah. But I mean, it depends how many people are in the shot. If there's a lot of people, you do need it on a higher aperture.
Yeah, that makes sense. But the other thing is also, if you put it on, because the cameras are getting so everything's auto when it comes to shutter speed priority. If you generally put on shutter speed priority, you're probably going to be getting an aperture about 5.4, even lower anyway.
Yeah.
But what lens have you got?
I've got it here actually. What I mainly use is this 24-71.
Okay.
So
I
like how versatile it is.
So your boss likes a lower depth of field.
Yeah.
So you get more of a blurrier background then.
Yeah.
I saw a lot of on a Facebook group the other day, and they were advising a young photographer to get a 50mm lens because everything will be at such a low depth of field, like 1.8. But then I was sitting there thinking, well, 1.8 is really blurry.
Yeah, if you need to change that and you can't.
You can't, yeah, you're stuck with it. And I'm just like, but they were all going on about, and you get such a fast shutter speed from it. I'm sitting there thinking, well, you will, but depends what you're photographing at a wedding.
Yeah.
So I think this is a very American thing. It's just you just ignore everything else and just go low aperture. Okay, we'll just wait for Rafi to come back. He'll be back in a second. Here he goes back again. Okay, so then you've got aperture mode. Okay, the problem with aperture mode is if you don't have a tripod and your camera goes. Do you remember what I said in your first lesson? Anything lower than you need a tripod. Do you remember what the shutter speed was?
Was it 1/60th?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Yeah, anything lower than a 60th, you need a tripod. So if you're using aperture mode and you're not paying attention, and you've only got to turn from, well, okay, outside, loads of light, and then you walk into a building, you're in a low light area, and it goes below 60th of a second, and it's very, very easy to do. And you haven't got your tripod, and you're walking around with your camera in your hand, and you've told it what aperture, and then it goes below 60th, all those pictures are going to be camera shake, blurred. Okay, so I never use aperture priority. I never do. I would rather use manual and take care and make sure that I'm considering my shutter speed every time. I'm not just letting the camera work it out for me. Okay. And I did something similar last week on Friday at the event, but in shutter speed, because I know the camera is going to do it for me. Normally I would choose 200 for the second, but I was rushing around like a headless chicken, as I always do. I put it on 125th of a second. Not, it's only one stop difference, but that just shows that I wasn't taking notice perfectly because I want to put it on 200 every time when it's shutter speed priority. Okay, now P mode, program mode. This is what I would have done a year ago. Okay, and I would have used one of these. Okay, anyone used a camera flash before? Okay, so Rafi and Libby you have. Okay, these are so easy to use. Okay, but most people are scared of them. Okay. Now, when you all camera flashes, if you go to the button mode, which is basically setting, and you'll find the letter, it will say M for manual. It will say, I think it even does auto and aperture priority version. If you put it on TTL, which is for through the lens, TTL, yeah, you put your flash on your camera. I'm sticking this is my one. Okay, no, sorry, this is for my Sony, so I can't put it in. You put it in here. Okay. Then you put it on P mode. Okay. Basically auto. Okay. And then what you do is if you're in a normal venue, so like the venue I was in the other day had a flat ceiling and it wasn't massively, massively high. Okay. I can bounce my light comes up, light comes down. And what happens is the camera automatically goes to 60th of a second, which means the camera can be in the hand. The camera automatically, because it's on P mode, goes on to 60th of a second. Can you see that little dot thing here? That is a sensor, and that reads the amount of that reads the distance between me and you, as in my subject. Now, if I'm close to somebody, and this is so easy, folks, I could teach a child to do this. If the person is close to me, light comes up, light comes straight down because they're close to me. If the person is further away from me, I bring it down, light comes up, you're just working out the angle, okay? And you can also do it in portrait. If the person is close to me, light comes up, light comes down, this person's further away, light comes up, hits the ceiling, comes back down again. And it does work. It lights it every single time. Yeah. Even if you're in a large room, it lights your subject because the light comes up and light comes down. It's that powerful. Okay. But you put it on P mode on the camera and you put this on TTL. Okay. Now, I was at a wedding a while back. And so I've literally just taught you that in what? I taught you that in 10 seconds. Yeah. I was at a wedding. And I don't normally go up to photographers when I know they're making mistakes, but this one was a real big mistake. This photographer had that pointing towards his subject, but he had that pointing backwards. So someone had given him a crap tip. And I keep seeing him looking at his camera and you could see it in his face like he's like, oh shit, I've made a mistake. That customer had come to my studio and asked me for a quote for the wedding. And I actually knew them and they ended up actually inviting me to the wedding. And then I found out they paid like 300 quid for this wedding photographer. 300 quid, Libby. It's ridiculous, isn't it? It's like, oh God Almighty, you got some crap. And it was, he didn't know what he's doing. He must have said, oh, I could do it. I'll have a go. I'm a hobby photographer. Well, he had his flash pointing that way. Where's the light going? The light was going behind him every time. So all his pictures were dark. Okay. So all you got to do, just point it the right bleeding way. Light comes up, light comes down. It's so easy. It's so easy. If you want to get now, up until I got mirrorless, I've always used camera flash. Okay. But now I have mirrorless, I can open up the ISO to 25,000. Okay, which lets light in. I'll just repeat that. So now that I've got mirrorless, I can knock my ISO up to 25,000 and it lets loads of light in. Does that make sense, folks, from our first lesson? Yeah. If I'm using a digital SLR, I can only go probably as high as 2000 ISO before it gets noisy. So I have to use flash. And now, yes, I'm old school because I've been doing this for 25 years. So there's a few things I do old school. Okay. But I love this. Libby, this will get you. Okay. There's a wedding photographer in London charging £4,500. £4,500 because he uses camera flash and it's retro. So these retro, these hippie folk in London are going, wow, you use camera flash. It's retro. I'm going to pay you an extra £2.5 grand or an extra £2 grand. I'm moving to London. I'm serious. I'm moving to London tomorrow. Forget the teaching. If someone's going to pay me £4.5 grand for doing what I've been doing for 20 years, only because mirrorless came in a couple of years ago properly. But so easy. Okay, so easy. But I am finding my images look more naturally lit. Okay, it's what the people who use mirrorless go. If they don't actually know how to use the camera settings, it's like, well, my lighting is naturally lit now. My images are. No, it's just you just stuck it on auto. Okay, you're not the ISO up really high. It's all you've done. Anyway, if you want one of these, Godox, you don't need to buy the Nikon one. You don't need to buy the Canon one. Okay, don't buy the Niwu ones or whatever, however they call them. Some Chinese mate, they're called Niwu. So it's kind of spelled Neewer. They're not good. Okay, they don't last that long. Buy the Godox ones. Okay, they're about £120 the cheapest. But I just want to show you something. Okay, now this is where I'm old school. Okay, this is where I'm old school. You can now get two types of batteries for them. Okay, so sorry, I'm coughing. I haven't got the battery down here, but I've got two of these. I've got one for my Sony, which I have as my extra camera, and I never use it now. And I have one for my Nikon. Okay, these batteries, they are called lithium, and what they are, you will see they have a number on the side. You look absolutely knackered, Brooke. You're scratching your eyes. You look absolutely knackered. Photographers, you've got to get sleep, folks. You've got to get sleep when you're a photographer. It's a knackering day. Okay, when you look at the battery, these are proper rechargeable batteries. They're not your ones you get from like the pound shop for £1. Okay, if you have a look on the number, you'll see that it has a number, and I don't think. Can you do it here? Yeah. Can you set a blurry number? It says 2500. Okay, I could do a full wedding on 4 of these, and they would fit in there perfectly. Yeah. The lowest they do are 1,800, and I think the highest you can get them is 3,600. Okay, the higher the number, the longer they last. Okay, the problem is they take a long time to recharge. Okay, they take a long time to recharge. Never get a battery charger which says it does it in like half an hour, 40 minutes. They wipe your battery out. They kill your batteries. I made that mistake years ago. Okay, I was in London Camera Exchange and I saw this thing, £100, and it recharges your batteries in like 20 minutes. Every battery after that was dead. You only ever used them as a reserve. Okay, but they don't tell you that. Okay, now the other one. So if you bought this flash with these, they don't come with the flash, but you get a cheaper flash with Godox. So this one would probably be about 120 quid. Okay. If you get the one where it gives you a battery, and it's a much bigger battery than this, I'm just showing you because I've got a battery next to me. This is from actually Sony, and the battery fits in there. They're about 180, but I think the power is like 4,000 mH or something they call it, lithium, yeah. But they last for about 2 weddings. Okay. Now, I have to be honest. I had a Nikon camera flash. And I had it. It had done about 200 weddings. It was still had it. It was. I don't think the power was quite there, but it was still good. And it had done all these hundreds and hundreds of interior shoots that I'd done. Okay, that cost me £450 when I was 22, and I was still using that Nikon flash when I was 35. My studio got broken into, and someone nicked all my equipment. Okay. The only reason I then started to use Godox, which was for me was a cheaper make, was because I was talking to other wedding photographers and they were all going, I'm now using Godox. They're very, very good, and they're near enough a third of the price. Okay. But I have not done 200 weddings with this, so I don't know how strong it is, how long it's going to last. Okay. Libby, do you guys use camera flash?
Yeah, we use that one.
Use Godox. Yeah. Everyone does now. They don't buy the Nikon and the Sony and
Right.
the Canon because these are absolutely really, really good, and they are. I wouldn't recommend it otherwise. I think they're absolutely brilliant. But you need to buy. Can you see the little fit here, the little metal bit? You need to buy the right one for your camera brand. So Rafi, if you've now got Canon, if you buy them from Amazon, folks, if you buy them from Amazon, just make sure it says Canon fit. Okay, I'm Nikon, mine's Nikon, and then I've got a Sony, which is this one's for the Sony one. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Now the next bit. The next bit. We no longer have to now use all the different camera settings, which basically, because we now know how to use our camera manually, right? So, do we now need to use the macro one? What's the macro one? What do you think the macro setting would do if we put the camera on macro setting? What type of aperture do you think it would give you?
Like a really low aperture.
Yeah, blurry effect, isn't it? Yeah. Then we have mountain photography. What aperture are we going to use for that one? Do you remember the apertures, folks? The higher the aperture, f22, architecture, landscape, group shots, f11, blurry effect. The lower aperture is like 1.8 up to 5.4 to get the blurry effect. Okay, so if we're going to do landscape straight away, f22, camera on a tripod, meter read on a sunny day, you might get about a third of a second, maybe 60th on f22, but you're going to need a tripod. If I was going to photograph someone during the night time, because we've got a little picture of a person here and the star, and I want to add some light, what do you think I'm going to do? Knock the up. What is it? Knock the
ISO.
Knock the ISO up. Yeah. So the camera's just going to knock the ISO up. But does the camera know the capability of itself? If your camera can go up to 25,000 ISO, the camera might decide to knock it up to 25,000 and your images are really noisy. Okay. Photographing people. What setting are you guys going to do now? What did I say? What aperture did I say for photographing people?
f11.
F11 for portrait. So you're an absolute legend. You're learning, Brooke. Got it right. But you don't need to. Do it yourself. What about sport photography? Now the problem is if you put your camera on sport mode, does the camera know what sport you're doing? You could have someone jogging, or you could have a Formula One race car going. Whing. Well, how does it know what shutter speed to give you? So if you're now if you do sport photography, it's the other way around. I haven't mentioned it to you. Sport photography, you choose your shutter speed first, then you meter read, and the camera tells you what the aperture is. Okay, I'll repeat it. It's just the other way around. Sport photography, you choose your shutter speed first, and you meter read, and you ask the camera what the aperture is. Now, I'll tell you what the aperture is straight away. It's going to be low, because sport photography, if you're going to photograph a Formula One car, you might want to go as fast as 2,000 for the second. If I'm photographing someone playing rugby, 500 for the second. If I'm photographing kids in a studio running around, 200 for the second. Okay? So it's going to give me a lower aperture. Okay? And if you look at motorsport photography, it's always a very, very, very low aperture because you're going at such a high shutter speed. It's just the opposite, isn't it? The opposite. Okay. So we no longer need these settings because we are now photographers. Congratulations, folks. You now officially have a photography degree. You can brag. Okay. Because university students wouldn't know any of this. Okay. And again, I only ever use two settings. One is manual. The other is now shutter speed priority with the higher ISO. Or if I wanted to, I might stick it on portrait and use camera flash. Okay, as simple as that. Okay, it is 11 o'clock, folks. We'll forget that bit. Let's go for a 15-minute break. Can you come back at 11:15? Stretch your legs, get yourself a drink, go to the loo. And I will see you shortly. Come back at 11:15, 11:15. I'll see you shortly. How are we doing, folks? How we got Rafi there? Splendid. So, one thing I'd like you to do when you get the chance is get your cameras and meter read. Okay? And just learn how to meter read. Okay? Choose aperture 22, meter read. ISO 100, meter read. Choose aperture 11, ISO 100, meter read. Go down to your lowest aperture. So let's say 1.8. ISO 100, meter read. Okay? Learn how to meter read using manual settings. If it goes below 60th of a second, you need a tripod. Point the focal point in different areas. For instance, if you kind of think of my room here, it looks quite light. I've actually got a light on in my room. But you can still see shadowy areas in my room. For instance, on that side, no, that one. Trying to do it. Anyway, the fish tank there. That's a bit weird, isn't it? I can't even do it opposite. Anyway, fish tank there is finally got it shadowy. Okay. Put the spot metering mode on that area. Focus over there. Yeah. And then try it. It's a bit weird, isn't it, opposite? Then try it over there, it's a brighter area. See the differences with the shutter speed. Okay. Learn how to do that. And once you've got that, all you then have to, if you're an architectural photographer, for instance, all you then got to do is master composition as a photographer. That's all architectural photography is. Then what you can do, put your camera on shutter speed priority, so S. Put your camera on 200th of a second. Go into your settings and put your ISO on auto. You can basically go around and do paparazzi stuff. But it depends what camera you're using, depends how high the ISO can go. So I can show a picture from last week, just with regards to the ISO. Yeah, okay, I can. Okay. This is a shot that I took at the JJS, cropped it a little bit, but I just want to show you. Can you see the noise in the image? Can you see the pixelation on his face? And especially in the black areas. Okay. Now, this room has no light at all coming in. There's no windows at all. It's in the cellar. But that's 25,000 ISO. Okay. And that's still fairly good. Okay. But if you're using like a digital SLR, that would be so much more noisy. Okay. Now I know that JGA aren't going to have these printed. Okay. I know that they're just going to go on our social media and maybe on the website. Okay. But if I was working for a client who was going to say, okay, it's going to go on a poster, I might be a little bit like, okay, I'm going to use camera flash at this point because the ISO, even look, it's the best camera, and it's the best camera Nikon have. It's the Nikon ZO. It ain't going to go any higher. Okay. Okay, so just want to go back through these, folks, and we're going to have a look at some different types of cameras. So, product photography. I didn't want a perfectly sharp background in this image. I was working with my actual client on the day. I didn't want a perfectly sharp background, so I went for a lower aperture, but I also wanted enough depth of field so I could get enough detail in the actual drink itself. Okay, we're just testing 7.1 aperture. The client had an idea where they wanted like the vapor, and what he did is he got a piece of orange peel and you squeeze it and it like shoots out lots of little bits of vapor. But I said, for me to do that, I'm going to have to do a fast enough shutter speed. So 320th of a second. Okay, it's only one light, folks, only one light. It's a piece of a shiny acrylic behind it. Okay, I've had this image in several magazines. Interior photography. F22 straight away. I've meter read. It's 15 seconds. So my lens is actually open for 15 seconds, but I've also added light. Okay, I've got 6 lights. 1, 2, 3, 1 light, 4, here, 5, and there's the other one. I can't remember quite where I put it. Might actually be bouncing in the ceiling in the room. Very, very dark room. Okay, 15 seconds, ISO 200. Okay, if I'm honest with you, folks, ISO 200 and ISO 100 is no difference. Okay. Does anyone know what this little black dot is? I always show this and I always ask this question. Does anyone know what that little black dot is? It's dust on the sensor. It's a dirty sensor. Okay. So if you're using a digital SLR camera, you've got mirrors inside which go up and down. Okay. If you start to see little black dots appear, you've got to edit those every single time on Photoshop or Lightrooms. Okay. It is because you've got dust on the actual mirror. If you've got a if you've got a mirrorless camera, you've got dust on there. Okay. And if you're changing lenses all the time, dust can be in the air and you get little bits of dust and then you get little black dots on your camera. Okay. If you get with a digital SLR, it's a lot more difficult to do to get rid of the actual dust. Take it to the likes of London Camera Exchange. There's loads of those around the UK. Or take them to Wex and they say, give us your camera for an hour and they'll clean it for you. I have never cleaned my own digital SLR camera bodies. Okay. You can do it. There's YouTube videos and they teach you how to do it. I think you've got to have a real delicate hand to do it. I've got too much of a heavy hand to do it. I wouldn't risk it. Mirrorless is a lot easier. Mirrorless, you basically go on Amazon and you buy like this tiny little squeegee. Like a squeegee they do the windows with. And you hit, like in a window cleaner comes a thing, tiny one. And all you do is you just they give you the solution and you basically just spray it on the actual sensor, which I just showed you there, and you just squeegee. Yeah. So I do that one. But again, you can go on eBay and they show you, not eBay, YouTube, and they show you exactly how to do it. Okay. We used to have a second camera in the studio, which we never used. I only ever use it if I needed it as like an extra to do a bit of social media. Just in the studio. I remember we had a photographer nearby going, "Oh, your camera's all dusty, and how dare you show this?" And I was like, "Well, it's just a second camera." But I didn't want to take it to London Camera Exchange because in those days they'd keep it for a couple of days, and just in case the studio needed it, I didn't risk it. Here we go, Brooke. Baby photography. Always focus on the eyes. My studio is always the same. F11. Always the same. F11 in the studio for photographing babies, photographing children, photographing portraits. My headshots are all F11. 200th of a second, ISO 100 or ISO 200. And then I add my studio light. Okay. Now, I've just mentioned, for instance, I got invited to a university. I got invited to Bath University to go and look at their degree show. And they tell them there's a few real photographers are going to come around. And most people used to know me in Bath as being the photographer because I had the studio. I used to do a lot of events. And so when I walk in the room, all the students will try and come over and see if they can get some work experience with me. And I'm looking around and I'm looking at some work, and I see some. It's like a yellow acrylic background with a model in front of it, and I went, "That was a really nice shot. Composition, really nice shot." So not just criticizing. And I said to the young lady who stood next to her, I said, and what it was, she had like a necklace round, which is basically to do a fashion shot. That's the bit she was photographing. Yeah, model with the necklace. So the necklace should be perfectly sharp. Okay. And I said to the learner, I said, "Why is your image blurred?" And she said, "No, it's not." I said, "It is. You've used the wrong aperture." She didn't understand it. And I went, "You're on a third-year degree. You finished your degree. You failed it." And the learner got really upset. I was just like, "I'm just being honest with you, because if you come and work with me, I'm going to be honest with you." But I said, "You failed. You failed your brief. This is really, really blurred." I said, "You're focused on the eye." I said, "Yeah, you're right. You're focused on the eye. That's perfect. That's what you should do every time when you're photographing people, focus on the eye." But I said, "The main part of the jewelry is really blurred. You've used like aperture 1.8. Literally from the under the face under, it got blurrier and blurrier and blurrier. So you guys now know what your apertures are." But that shocked me. I'm like, "God almighty, you've done a 3-year degree and any more apertures you're using." So that is why I always use f11. So when I do my headshots, when I do my fashion, I always use f11. That was what I was taught, and you will get good enough. Even if something is like down here, it will still be in focus. Now, if I was doing something for Gucci or I was doing something for a high brand, yes, I would go for a higher aperture because I'd want to make sure that necklace was perfectly sharp. Does that make sense, folks? So if I was doing something for a big international brand and they wanted that piece of jewelry, yes, I would go for a much higher aperture because I need to make sure that that piece of, even let's say like this, for zip, I want to make sure that zip for a big brand would be sharp because it's going to go in on posters. It's going to go, but I would probably have a big medium format camera, a different camera to what I'm using. Okay, with much bigger file sizes and everything. Okay, but f11. Okay. I used to do boudoir photography. Never did porn. If anyone says that, never did porn. Did boudoir photography is good money. Okay, people want to look beautiful. I got a lot of work from this shot. I ended up then getting, in those days, it was like FHM magazine, Nuts magazine, paid money. Straight away, no difference to this, is it? 100, 200 for the second, f11, ISO 200. f11, 200 for the second, ISO 200. I just add light. Yeah. If I was doing my headshots, the exact same one. Yeah. Now, if we go for composition, the reason why I got this shot, that I got work because of this shot, and I'm not being disrespectful because everyone has different bodies, is I think her name was Megan. She was about literally 5 foot. She was a very small young lady. But, and I'm not being rude, I'm just being honest, she had a very big nose. So if we think about composition, would I photograph her side on with a big nose, or would I photograph her face on to hide the big nose? You can't tell she's got a big nose, can you? It's composition. It's the shape of the body, it's positioning. If you have, I'm 43, folks. I have a big belly. I'm getting a belly. Men do. Down to our testosterone or something. Anyway, I've got a bit of a belly. You wouldn't put me straight on now, I would say. You get me to turn my body to a bit of an angle. Changes the shape of the body. It changes the position of your body. It's composition. So now you know how to meter read. The next bit is adding light and then positioning your people. Yeah. Libby, when you do your group shots for weddings, if you have everybody stood straight, it doesn't look as good. So what you generally do is you get them to turn their bodies in, turn the body in, turn the body in, turn the body in. Then you can bring them together a bit closer. But also it changes the shape. if everyone is straight on, especially bigger people, and we have a society of bigger people now, they look bigger in a shot. Also, if you photograph people and you do fashion shots and stuff, but not fashion shots, let's say portraits in a studio, Brooke. Yeah. If you photograph bigger people and you're doing like portraits of them, crop them close. Okay. Don't do a wide shot where there's loads of space around them because it makes them look bigger. Crop in. So you're literally cropping in. So you see, like when my hands are here, I could do a shot like here and I have space around me. If you're doing portraits and you're photographing people, crop in and do a bit of an angle like that. It works every time. I've had bigger people and I'm sitting there thinking, they ain't going to buy these pictures. And they've come in and they've loved them because I've made them look slimmer. I haven't made them look slimmer. I've just literally cropped them so they are not as big. Make sense? Yeah. Straight away. Now, this is a really summer's day. This was about June or July. I've travelled down to Andover. Again, this is the army base down in Andover. This went in loads of magazines. F-22 straight away. I've meter read because it's a sunny day. I get a faster shutter speed. 200th of a second, ISO 200. So I haven't chosen 200th of a second like I've done in the studio. It's just because there's that much sun and it's a beautiful summer's day. It gave me 200th of a second. If it had been cloudier, it would have been a longer shutter speed. So it could have been 100. It could have been 60th. It could have been whatever, a third of a second. Okay. And this one, folks, straight away, it's nighttime photography. I love doing nighttime photography. I used to do these lessons in Bath. I'd take about 10 people around. And we'd do the same setting every single time. Because nighttime is all about motion of light and motion of water. F-22, because it's still architecture. Now, when it comes to nighttime photography, I used to get people to do 5 seconds, 10 seconds, 15, 20, 25, 30. So 5 different shots of the different shutter speeds. Cameras on a tripod, ISO 200 or 100, and then you get the motion. So we see here, I've got the motion of the light from, this is Bristol in the background. I've got the water flowing because it's a long shutter speed. A lovely shot. There's a bit of a story to do with this one. I was in the little corner shop. If anyone knows me, I like a bottle of Coke and a Twix. I don't do tea or coffee. I need a bit of sugar. I'm in the coffee shop, and in Bath, every little corner shop sells postcards. And I get this glance in my eye, and I'm like, that's one of my bleeding shots. They'd nicked it from a website. They'd nicked it from your website, one of my blogs. So I rang the company up, and they said they were sold by somebody. I said, utter rubbish. So the only thing is on that image. I said, you've nicked it. And I did send them a legal letter. But I think they got found out by several photographers because a month later they'd closed the company. They got liquidated. And because they were selling it on so many postcards all around the country, let's say, they owed a lot of money. So they just liquidated the business. It was a company in Blackpool. I was fuming. I was like, it's my bleeding image. You thieving. Now, the rule on copyright, I'm going to go off on a tangent now. The rule on copyright is you, as the photographer, own the copyright unless you legally sign it over with a contract. Okay? Now, you will work for somebody, so your employer owns the copyright. But your employer owns the copyright unless it is legally signed over. Okay? So I've got a battle at the moment just about to go to court. It is a big brand who a company went bankrupt. They bought the company through liquidation. When the big businesses go bankrupt, another company will normally buy them out. And then they continued to use my images. We notified them and told them they were using my images, and they couldn't use my images. They had to buy them. They had to buy the rights to them because it's my copyright. And they continued to do it. I made about 35K. So you own the copyright unless you sign a contract to state otherwise. Okay. If someone just uses your image and says, well, that's what I could use it. It was on the web. No. In one of the other lessons, I'm going to show you a software which actually searches the web for you. I'll show you the image. I'll show you the image. This one is actually being used, folks. I've gone off on a tangent, I know I have, but I just want to show you something. Yeah, down the bottom. Here we go. Yeah, here we go. This image is bright because this screen is too bright. I showed it yesterday in the lesson. This image is used in a restaurant in Jamaica, and this image is used in a restaurant in Prague. Someone's nicked it and has put it on. Again, it was on my website. They've put it on a photographic library or whatever, and it's being used. And I've actually been to the restaurant in Prague and sat there, and it's on their menu. And I said, the waiter spoke brilliant English, and I said, you know this image? I went, it's mine. And he went, no. And I said, it's mine. It's mine. I took it 10 years ago. I said, you guys have nicked it. And the manager came over to tell me. I had a laugh with him. I was like, don't worry about it. It is what it is. I said, I'll have a free meal out of you. He didn't. He wouldn't give me a free meal because he thought I was joking. But I was like, no, that's my bleeding image. But it could have been the graphic design company who did the brochure and everything. They could have literally just gone on an image library. I've never put my images on an image library. These ones. Some of my earlier stuff were on a few image libraries. We didn't really make much money from it, so I took them all off. But yeah. But anyway, yeah, copyright theft. But they're making out it's their food. It's not their food. It was done in a small little restaurant in Bath. But the only reason I found it, that this restaurant is using the image, is because there's a software, which I'll show you in another lesson. It searches the web. You upload your images, and then it searches the web for them. And then they send the legal letter saying you now owe our client money. I've had money out of it, but a lot of people ignore them. So know your rights, folks. You are the photographer. Oh, actually, yeah, Brooke. Family portraits. Problem you guys have is that people take the image and scan them. And then they go to the likes of Tesco's and Morrison's and then get them printed. Have you guys had that?
We have a thing where they can only print it up to, once they buy it, they can only print it up to a certain size. So I think the digital copies are only printable up to like 8x6 or something. So if they do it any bigger than that, if they do them any bigger than that, then obviously it loses the quality. And if we find out, like we had a customer that she'd blown it up and had it printed on her own canvas, and it looked awful. And she sent a picture to my boss and was like, look what we've had made. And she was like, well, you weren't supposed to do that. Like it says in the contract, you can't print it any bigger than that size.
Yeah.
Because obviously we sell the big frames. So if they print it more than that, then it's like, I don't know the ins and outs of it yet, but yeah.
No, it makes sense. Yeah, it makes sense.
They're only allowed to print it to a certain size. And if they go above that, then they're like going against the contract that they've sold.
Yeah, you see, so let's say the contract. I mentioned copyright contract. Americans, from what I can see on these Facebook groups, every client signs a contract. A lot of photographers in the UK, but don't get people to sign contracts. And the general public won't read them and will ignore them, and then will go and do whatever they want to do. But yes, they'll then complain. But I would have, and I don't mean disrespectful, I would have felt if I've charged a customer £400 for the digital copies, it's a bit cheeky to then have a limit on the file size. I never did. Okay, but family portrait studios at the moment aren't making very much money. It is so hard, okay, because everyone thinks they can do it themselves. There's always a friend down the road who says they can do it. And when it comes to family portraits, people don't respect it like they used to, okay? So it's a lot harder to run a family portrait studio, which is what I had, okay? And if you put in perspective, we were doing 9 shoots a day, 7 days a week, and we only came out with £125,000 a year as in what the business brought in. But I've still got to pay my salary plus my 2 studio salary plus the rent plus the business rates. I only came out with like a 40 grand salary. That's not bad, but it's not as much when you sit there and look at it as in how much hard work it was. So the first year, I ran the whole studio before I then brought other staff in to run it for me. And I went and worked in Bath in the commercial studio, which I had. But I set it all up. But if I was in there every year, I'd only make 40 grand. And to be honest, every year it got less. And we then went from 125 down to 110. And over the 5 years, it got less and less. And I went, I'm not even making any money out of this now. Okay. But I can see why photographers now are doing that. They're saying, okay, there's the level on it. Yeah.
It might be more than 8x6. I'm not sure, but I know there
8x6 is very small.
There might be a limit on it.
So
I think
just kind of put it in perspective, just size-wise.
8x6 sounds wrong actually. Now I've said that, but I know it is quite small. Like it's probably no bigger than like an A4 sheet of paper because we sell like that size print. We sell for like £95. So yeah, it's probably half of that.
So, well, half of that.
Potentially. I don't know for definite. It sounds wrong now I'm saying it, but it's not very big at all. But it's probably for that reason.
Stop I paid 400 quid for your CD. And all I can do is print off small prints. Okay, so this is A4. So I've been printing for years, so I know the sizes. Commercially, we do A sizes. So when I deal with commercial clients, A sizes. So A4, A3, A0, and so on. A2, A1, A0. Okay. Photography, we deal with inches. Okay. So this, if I just scrunch this up a little bit, standard print in a studio, which most give away because you normally give 1 print away. It's about that size. That's about an 8x10.
Yeah, actually, I think that's what it might be. Actually, 8x10.
8x10, yeah, and 8x6 would be like that.
Yeah, no, it's definitely bigger than
much more. Actually, a bit like that. Yeah, anyway, but yeah, so that's about an 8x10. Okay, and most family portrait studios give that away as a freebie. They give one of them away.
Yeah.
So that's not a bad size because they can go to Boots to Chemist and go to Tesco's and they can print them off, and that's what most people would want. So yeah, you're then wanting to do the upsell to then say, well, actually, if we only give you the digital CD, the digital package, you can only print them this big. If you want something bigger, and you're going to frame it, and you're going to go to Dunelm's and go and get yourself a frame, yeah, you've got to buy it from us.
Yeah.
Which makes more money.
We don't do the digitals just by themselves either. They come with a print package. They're an upgrade on a print package.
It's great. It's the way to do it now. If I was doing it now, I would do the same. I'd go if you want the CD, and it's setting the expectation to the customer. And I know nowadays you ring the customer up and there's a sales point and you guide them and you tell them what not to wear, and you near enough have somebody who's very, very good on the phone.
Mm-hmm.
You're setting that expectation from the minute they've booked you to the minute they come in that they will be spending money.
Yeah.
We used to have customers come in who would go for the free print. And the point I was just going to mention about copyright, we'd get customers who'd come in for the free print and they wouldn't buy anything. And I've heard customers actually in the viewing room, when they didn't think I was listening, they go, we'll go to Morrison's after and we'll go and get them printed. And I've actually been around a friend's house and I've gone, that's like Emma. That was a young girl, Emma, wasn't it? Or something like that. And their family. And they went, oh yeah, that's my cousin. And it's weird. You remember what customers bought. And I went, she never bought anything. She got the free print. She went, oh yeah, she went down to Morrison's. That's like a friend of mine sitting there going, oh yeah, we went down to Morrison's and printed them. I'm like, well, you owe me about 250 quid. You and Emma. That friend of mine ended up buying me drinks for weeks after that. Because he's going to the pub every Sunday night. I'm like, well, you owe me about 100 quid, so you owe me about 10 drinks. It's always a way around it. But it's cheeky, isn't it? It's my living. I was like, you cheeky beggar.
Yeah.
So copyright is really important because otherwise we photographers will not be surviving. You won't have us around. So The photographer always owns the copyright unless it's signed over. And studios are finding ways around that. Now, this image here, I'm rabbiting on. I'm getting old, I'm rabbiting on. This image here, this is one of the very first weddings I ever did. And it's on an old Nikon camera. The ISO would only go as high as 1,000 because it's an early digital camera. F11, 15th of a second, 1200 ISO. The problem was, and I was worried about this, when they went for the kiss shot, their faces were going to be blurred. I mentioned this yesterday in the lesson, didn't I? When it comes to the kiss shot, you want to have a certain speed. I actually said to the couple, when we used to do this to the couple, when you go for the snog, can you actually stay there for a second? Give me about 2 or 3 seconds of the snog so I can get that one shot and don't move. So I think when you see people on TV going for the kiss and they're kind of like a longer time, it's because us photographers used to say to them, stay, because we need to get that longer shutter speed. Okay. Now I would knock the ISO up really high and I'd straight away get it. I'd knock it up to, let's say, 2000, 1800, and I'll be able to get it to 60th of a second. Okay. This was actually taken at Kegworth Hall. And the story with this one, composition isn't the best. I think it's like the second wedding I ever did after I did training. That's an ex-girlfriend of mine. And her boyfriend didn't know I dated her until a week before the wedding. She owned up to it. But when I met her on the first day of university, and she always said she was going to book me for a wedding. I never took it she would do, and I'd moved away, and she's found my details and rang me up and said, I told you I want you to do my wedding. I've seen you, I like your work. And I'm like, we dated for about 4 months. Your boyfriend, your partner's not going to like that. No, he'd be fine. He'd never told him the week before. And he invited me to like the stag do and everything because I used to know him quite well. And after that, he was just like, never speak to me again. And he was really grumpy on the wedding day, really. And I was like, well, it's not my fault. You booked me. Do your research. Anyway, yeah. But they got great shots. But now in this point, so you know, Libby, you know how you have do you have digital wedding albums where it's got like 100 pictures in?
We just have them on like a website. It's like a digital website, and they have galleries.
Oh, do you guys not do the wedding albums? Oh, wow. Okay, so much easier. Okay, wedding albums are about £400, folks. Okay, so a modern day wedding album. Let me just give me a second. Okay. Just give me a second. I just want to show you a wedding album. Just give me 1 second. It's downstairs in my studio. Just give me a sec. Okay. These are the normal wedding albums. Okay. They're about £170, £200 each. And the wedding albums are like that. Okay. You can change the color of the background, and it's all done with sim imaging. They're the best wedding albums in the country by far. I've always used them. And they're like that. Okay. Now, you can do 1 picture per page. So they're digital wedding albums. Okay. Now, the old style wedding albums, you might have seen your parents' wedding albums in the past, where they're an 8x10 image, which Brooke said they're on 8x10. There was like 8x10 print in like a leather wedding album, and it had like a sleeve kind of glued on. But the problem is those glues eventually break, and then the wedding album falls apart. What was I getting to? Oh yeah, so basically this. Oh, this was done in negative. Yeah, sorry. Okay, yeah. So they actually had it was done in digital. So digital. They actually had prints done, which went into the album. And then about a year later, everyone started getting these digital wedding albums. Okay. And Brooke, you would probably do something similar in the studio. Some people might want books done of images. Okay. So sim imaging, highly recommend. Now, I'd like you to do. Okay, it's 51 minutes past. Okay, tell you what. Let's go for a 15-minute break now. Okay, so we've done about 40 minutes, and then we're going to come back, and I'd like you to research what the difference is between a digital SLR and a bridge camera. A digital SLR and a bridge camera. So, can you come back at 5 minutes past 12, and then I'm going to get you to do this task, okay? Because there are different types of camera bodies out there, not just mirrorless and SLRs. Okay, folks? So if you can come back at 5 minutes past, I will see you shortly. See you in a bit. How are we doing, folks? Okay. So what I'd like you to now do is give you 20 minutes. I'd like you to research what the difference is between a digital SLR camera and a bridge camera. Okay. And there's one, see if anyone gets it. There's one big thing why I wouldn't buy a bridge camera. Okay. It's down to the meter reading. Give you that tip. I haven't gone too far with it. Down to the meter readings. Think what I've taught you: apertures, shutter speeds, ISOs. Okay, meter reading. So I'm going to keep the screen up. So what is the difference between a digital SLR and a bridge camera? So if you want to come back at 12:30, we will then discuss it. Okay, folks. I will see you shortly. I am going to be here. I'm going to be marking some works, but so if anyone needs me, just holler. I'll switch my mic and my webcam off. Okay. I'll see you shortly. How are we doing, folks? Here we have Rappy. Splendid. Just one thing I think I'd quickly mention, there's a lot of people don't know this. Does anyone know what this little dial does on the side of your camera? It's for your eyesight. So when you naturally, when you get older, your eyes get worse. I didn't actually realise this. My partner Halima is an orthoptist, so she's an eye specialist and deals with eye surgeries. When I first met her, I thought like your eyes just, some people have bad eyes, some people don't. You don't. In age, your eyes get worse. Okay, so when you're about 21, you then start to need just glasses to read with and things like that. And then when you hit about 40, you need to start getting, well, 43, you might need bifocals. Okay, as well as I thought bifocals for old people, but I'm near enough there. But what you do is you can wear your glasses and you can turn the dial. Well, actually, no, you can take your glasses off and you can turn the dial until it maps to your eyesight. Okay, so many people don't know. You just pull it out and then you just turn it. Okay, and put it back in again. So you can actually do it to your exact eyesight. So I'm about -1.5. I don't have very bad eyesight, but there you go. There's another fact of the day. Okay, so what's a bridge camera, folks? Who would like to explain to me what a bridge camera is?
Is it more of
Well-
a simple point and shoot camera? You can't change the lenses, and it's got quite a good zoom on it as well. So it's for like capturing more like wildlife or some photography where you want to get a good zoom, but you can't change. You're quite restricted with the lenses. You've got what you've got, kind of thing.
Yeah, near enough right. So what you've got is the lens is actually built into the camera, and it's a digital lens. So what that means is you won't say like an 18 to 200. It will say like on my image here, it says 24 times. It's a digital zoom. The bigger the zoom you zoom in, it's a bit like noise when it comes to ISO, but the pixels get bigger. Okay. It still has manual settings. It still has manual settings, but you can't change your lenses. Okay, you can't change your lenses. So a lot of young photographers or people who don't want to buy a digital SLR will buy, especially in the past, would buy a bridge camera. But did you realize anything to do with the aperture, the shutter speed, or the ISO? Anybody find out any information about that?
Does the aperture not go quite as low or something?
Yeah, it doesn't go as high as it only goes as high as 11.
Oh, right, okay, yeah.
Yeah, won't go any higher. So you can't get like a high depth of field like aperture, like f22 or anything. Okay, so I used to teach photography. So I used to teach photography lessons in Bath, Bristol, Manchester, Birmingham, and London, and always amateur photographers would come along, and loads of people would bring bridge cameras. But you know that first bit of the lesson I taught you in the first bit was the aperture, shutter speed, and the ISOs. They'd always leave disheartened because they could only go as high as 11. Okay. Now, some of them are really expensive. To be honest, they might as well have bought like a Nikon D3200, which is like the entry level Nikon, and the Canon had an entry level at the same time as well, about 10, 15 years ago. And you could swap. You could, and they weren't very big file sizes, but you could. It was an 18 to 35 mil lens, or so. No, 35 to 50 mil lens or something. I think it was. I mean, you can get a 75 to 300 mil lens. Okay, with these entry level cameras. So, and they only cost you to get the camera body was like 350 quid. So dirt cheap. But I knew people who bought mirrorless cameras who'd spent like £700, and they came out that lesson like, oh my god, I've wasted my money on this bridge camera. And then Fuji had a mirrorless camera, sorry, a bridge camera, which only allowed you to have 2 apertures. So you have to press the plus and the minus. It only allowed you to have 2 apertures, and people would spend about £300 on those. So they're an absolute waste of money. But I always ask the question because people, if you know anybody who's actually wanting to buy a bridge camera, say no. Say no. Okay. How many pictures do you think a digital SLR camera takes? How many pictures for lifetime? How many pictures do you think a digital SLR camera can actually take before it roughly breaks? I think it's going to surprise you. I might have said it yesterday. Let's play a game. In the chat box, folks. Go on, in a second. Let's play the game. I like to do a game. In the chat box, folks, can you please put the number? How many photographs do you think a digital SLR camera lasts? And if you win, you can have a guppy from the fish tank. You need to come and collect it. But you can have a guppy from the fish tank. Got too many. Those are the official terms and conditions from the JGA competition today. See Libby typing away. So how many pictures can a digital SLR camera take? Now, whilst you're writing that down, lots of people are now going for mirrorless cameras because it's the new thing. I could do a wedding with a digital SLR. I could do family portraits with a digital SLR. I could photograph events with a digital SLR. Okay, I could do product photography with a digital SLR. Oh, Harry's gone unlimited. Give us a number, Harry. Give us a number. It can't be unlimited. Something will break at some point. It's bits. It's mirrors. Something's going to break in there at some point. Harry's now gone for 100,000. Okay. It's 250,000 photographs. So a digital SLR camera, they last up to roughly 250,000 pictures. Now, you are going to get people who have got more. And I heard someone telling me not that long ago, he'd taken over 1 million pictures with it. So a digital SLR generally can take up to 250,000 pictures. So if you're looking to buy a new camera, have a look at secondhand. Because the way I look at it, lots of amateurs, they buy a camera, they get into photography, they've got some money and they think, okay, I'm a bit bored of this camera now. I want a better version of it because I want to show off to their friends, and they'll get rid of the other one secondhand, or they'll sell it to Wex and so on, and Wex will give them some money. And they don't give them very much money for them. And you can get a baby. So if you think about it, if you went to Wex and had a look at a second-hand digital SLR, and they're telling you it's 20,000 pictures taken on that picture, because the cameras can tell you how many pictures it's taken, and it's only got 20,000 pictures taken, or even 30, 40, it's a baby, isn't it? So do you have a look at second-hand camera bodies? Because the price difference is significant. Now, Rafi, what camera have you guys gone for?
The R50.
The R50, okay. Can you find out what the R50 would cost if it was brand new? And how much is it going to cost you? Second hand? I think you said about £700 or something. But what does a new one cost? Now, I generally don't
a new one.
Sorry, go on, Rafi. Yeah.
A new one looks like 800.
800. Okay. And what's the second hand one? What's the one you guys have gone for cost you?
It was 700 for the camera and 2 lenses.
and the 2 lenses all in one go. Wow, it's a great price because the lenses are going to be really expensive anyway. Okay. Now I don't know. Actually, can someone Google it? How long does a mirrorless camera last? How many pictures does a mirrorless camera last? I actually don't know because it's all technical, it's all digital, isn't it? It's all wires and cables. It's not like it's not mirrors like like a digital SLR costs.
It says 4 to 5 years. It doesn't
Does it
give
say
it
how
like
many
a
pictures though?
400,000 to 500,000.
Yeah, mine says 500,000.
So 500,000, yeah. Now, I mean, like, so Rafi, you said they're 4 to 5 years. I mean, to be honest, like my camera there, I could use it probably for 10 years, 15 years. It's just what level of photography capability I want. I mean, I wonder what the next level of photography is going to be with cameras. Probably a much higher ISO. Do you know what I think? Actually, I'm going to reword that. Tell you what it will be. It'll be the ISO will go really high, and the shutter speed will be about 60th of a second, and every picture you take will be able to be 22 aperture 22, so you get a full depth of field. That's what it ended up being. So that's what we want, isn't it? Really, a camera that you can have in your hand, and f22, and in low light, so a really high ISO. Okay, so have a look at if you're ever going to buy a new camera, have a look at second-hand camera bodies. The only thing I generally don't do, folks, and Rafi, you guys might have done this, I don't generally buy second-hand lenses. Only reason for that is because there's mirrors inside, and I don't know if someone's knocked it against a table or anything. But have I ever had a lens break on me? No. And I've knocked them. I'm just careful like that. I just don't buy second-hand lenses. But it depends what the price is, isn't it? At the end of the day. And just another tip. Today is the day of tips. Okay. This is an absolute no for me if you work for me. Okay. Never have your camera around your neck like this. Why is that? Go on, Rafi.
It swings around and you gotta knock it.
Yeah, you break your lens, you break your camera body. Okay. And cameras aren't cheap. This is how you carry a camera. That I'm now in full control of my camera body. If I knock it against a table or something, that's my fault, and that's my moving. That's my movement. I've had staff who've had it swinging. They've been walking down the stairs and it's been swinging, and I'm like, "Oi, it's £1,000 camera and a £800 lens. You're going to break that." Okay. Again, that, burn it. And I've got full control over my camera. It's basically an extra part to my hand. Okay. Who here honestly has their camera around the neck? Libby, do you do a wedding with a camera around your neck? No. Rafi, do you have your camera around your neck? Well, now we know not to.
I used to
Okay.
until I knocked it.
Ah, there you go. You knocked it. There you go. Because it happens. It happens. We've all done it. I've done it myself. That's why when someone told me how to do it, and I'm like, okay, I've kept it there ever since. Okay. Okay, next slide, folks. We're near enough finished. Today's a bit of a shorter lesson today, folks, because it's like the first lesson bit. Okay, so I'm not going to get you to read this article, but what's the difference between a digital SLR and a mirrorless camera? So what have you learned from me so far in the last 2 half lessons? What's the difference between a mirrorless camera and a digital SLR camera? Go on, Rafi.
The mirrorless can take more photos and it's lighter.
Anything else?
Let me think.
Okay, so the mirrorless has a much higher ISO. So if you're in a low light situation, e.g. a wedding or an event, the mirrorless, you can knock your ISO much higher. So a digital SLR, because it's mirrors inside, you can only knock your ISO probably up to, let's say, 2000, 3000 with the best digital SLR. Okay. A mirrorless, depending on the version you've got, you can generally go up to 25,000. Okay. So for me doing that event last week, if I'd had my digital SLR, I could have only gone up to 4,000, let's say. But I was able to do natural lit shots with no flash going off interrupting the day. It was able to get to 25,000. Okay, without the noise going too big. So if I knocked my digital SLR up to 25,000, it'd be very, very noisy and very, very pixelated. Okay. Now, the other thing is, yeah, you're right, they're lighter. They're not much lighter, if I'm honest with you. I mean, this is quite, for me, is quite a heavy camera, and I like a heavy camera, okay? But is that because it's Nikon compared to Canon or Sony? Probably the Sony's quite lighter, to be honest. So mirrorless cameras are also used by a lot of videographers. Okay, again, because they want to knock the ISO up really high. Okay, and you'll have a lesson on videography, so I won't go into too much, but videographers use a lot, like the Nikon, the Sony, latest Sony, you can knock the ISO like 25,000 as well. And then the people, it's great for videographers, dash photographers. Okay. Mirrorless is totally digital. There's no mirrors inside it. The digital SLR, it is mirrors. Okay, it is mirrors inside it. Okay, what else can I think of? Yeah, I think generally the reason I bought mine was because I wanted for wedding photography, I wanted a much higher ISO. Simple as. Okay, yeah, the mirrorless, you can put the settings on it, so it finds the eye every time. So because it's like AI, it finds the eye, or it's meant to find the eye every single time. Okay. So for portraiture, so Brooke, you doing family portraits, that's absolutely, that's brilliant. Okay. But if you haven't got mirrorless, you just move the little up, down, left to right thing on the eye every single time. You get very used to it. You do like a split second, easy peasy. Okay. Libby, the same for weddings. If you can stick it on the eye, does it every time. I actually don't like it. I don't like it. I like doing it the old-fashioned way. I'm old-fashioned. I still prefer to bring the up, down, left, right into the eye every time. So it's just second nature. Okay. So yeah, and then it focuses on the eye every single time. Okay. But they are now really expensive. So for me, if I didn't want to spend £3,000 on a camera body, I've got a grant. So if I was to go and buy a new camera body now and I didn't have the money, I'd just happily go and buy a digital SLR. I'd still be able to do everything I wanted. I could still run my family portrait studio. I could still do the weddings. I could still do my product photography. No difference at all. And the last bit to do with a mirrorless camera, they have much bigger file sizes. Much bigger file sizes. But do I need those file sizes? No. I've got mine on small but fine, because I don't need the gigantic file size because it takes much bigger hard drive space. And is my customer going to have for a wedding shot? Are they going to have an A0 print? No. But when I do corporate stuff, commercial stuff like the product photography, yes, I never know what my picture could be used for. It could be used to go on a billboard. I never know what they're going to be used for. Okay, so mirrorless. There are several things, but you're paying for them. Has anybody here seen a medium format or a negative camera before? So this is a 35mm negative camera. Okay, that has batteries in it, so it can trigger a lot quicker. Or what you do is the old-fashioned way. Can you see this bit here? You turn the dial. You turn it. Yeah, let me see if I can show you. 1 second. This is where I feel old because you guys don't know what negative is. So you guys know what negative is, don't you? Because I mentioned it to my nephew, and he went, negative? What's negative, Uncle Ant? He's like 19. I'm like, it's negative film. Film goes in here. You put your film in here, and then there's a little black bit, and you just roll it across, and you just put it into here. When you turn the dial, close the door, bring that down, and just turn it, and the film rolls round. Okay? Let's play another game. How many pictures does a film have? A negative film, when we used to use film, how many pictures do you think you got per film? Let's see if you can have a good guess. No Googling, folks. No Googling. Let's have a guess. How many films did how many pictures could you get in a film? So when you sit there and think you get your digital now, you can get a memory card and that has like 10,000 pictures on, 20,000 pictures on it. Oh, but the good old days, folks. Oh, but I miss the good old days. Because we had to concentrate. Because every film we used to have, when we used to buy a film, it would cost about £5 for the film. Then we had to walk to the printers to hand the film in. And then you would leave it with them for 24 hours. Then, as a student, we'd then walk back the day after to get the negatives developed, or you got prints as well. So everything it wasn't cheap. Okay. Oh, and it used to cost about £12 to get each negative. I think it was like £12 to £14 to get the negatives developed. So it all cost you. So photography in those days was really expensive. Okay, so Libby has gone for 50. Brooke has gone for 20. Raf has gone for 70. Sarah has gone for 40 to 50. The answer is there were two. One was 24 and the other was 36. Could you imagine only having 24 pictures for a film? You had to concentrate. You couldn't mess up because, again, it cost you £5 for the actual prints. And then, okay, if you went to Boots Chemist, they'll charge you £5 to be developed. But if you've got professionally developed, they're about 12 quid. So I know it's crazy, folks, but we used to concentrate taking our pictures. We looked at the composition, we looked at the lighting and everything because you couldn't afford to mess up. Okay. Now, so this is a negative camera. Okay. This is an F3, absolutely legend. Okay. I should just tell you a story about this. My partner works for the NHS. Just don't tell anybody, by the way. She works for the NHS and she was going through some filing cabinets and she found it. And she rang me up and went, is this any good? And I'm like, Googled it. It's an F3. I knew what an F3 was because I used to have the FM2 when I was young. So I'm an FM2. I went, Halima, it's worth about £900. So she went and asked the boss, and she goes, "Can Ant collects old cameras? Can he have it?" And he went, "It's only going to go in the bin." Ha 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 ha! So now, talking to Libby's boss about wedding photography, I went and did a wedding fair. Your boss said, "Do some negative," didn't he? I'm going to do one film, which is going to be 36 pictures. I'm going to have to be clever with which pictures I take. But this is heavy. It's heavy. Okay. Let's play a game. Another game, folks. Got like some games today. So what we then have is medium format. Does anybody here know what a medium format camera is? So a medium format is basically like a square neg. So that's the negative. You see here? You see it like a square negative where a 35mm is a rectangular negative. Okay. We would use these for fashion photography and you used to look through the viewfinder, look down through the viewfinder. It wasn't a viewfinder like looking forward, like you've got on your cameras. We used to look down. Loved my Mamiya 645. Loved it. And Libby, the weddings which we used to do, because I mentioned earlier on 8x10, the first weddings I ever did with Peter Constable were using a medium format camera. And you looked special, but the customer would only get, we do about 3 or 4 films per day. And it was predominantly the group shots, which the customer wanted. We didn't do any reportage, only a few reportage. Now it's all about the reportage. And then you would have the group shots, which would generally go in the wedding albums. Okay. So how many pictures, folks, did you used to get on a medium format negative? How many pictures do you get on a medium format negative? And they were called 6 by 5 negatives. That's the size of it. You can still buy mirrorless by the medium format. You can buy them in the negative version, in the film in digital version. They're about £35,000, and they're used in fashion photography. Okay, so Brooke's gone 30, Libby's gone 60, Sarah's gone 15. What's Rafi going to go for? Remember, if you get it right, you win a fish. Weirdly, no one's ever come and picked up a fish yet. I've been doing this for about 5 years. No one's ever come and picked up those guppies. One day somebody will come around, just knock on the door. Rafi's gone 70 again. The answer is 14. 14. And you know how I mentioned about ISO? So I can knock my ISO up to 25,000, for instance. And the digital camera, a normal digital SLR, the ISO would be, let's say 2000. We used to have what we call film speed. Film speed. Film speed is the ISO. So you had 100 if you're doing landscape, 200 photographing people, 400 if you did sport photography. Nighttime, you had 800 ISO. Okay. You couldn't get any higher. Okay. But the negative was pixel. So you know what I was talking about noise? The negative were the bigger pixels. So if you had it on 800, your image was always very, very grainy image. Okay. So if any of you, if you go and do a photography degree, the first 6 months, they generally make you just use negative because they're teaching you how to meter read. Okay. You can buy cheap negative cameras on eBay and you can still have a go. Okay. And you can send your film away and it'll be developed and I think they come back in about a week or something, but you can send it away for 3 or 4 quid. But it's good fun. Have a go. It's not part of the course at all, but if you want to have a go, have a go. But it's no difference to the cameras that you're using now, except you have bigger file sizes. It's still manual settings, aperture, shutter speeds, ISO's, film speed. No difference. Your cameras are identical, basically, to a negative camera. Okay. Now, can you type in Google Hasselblad, medium format cameras? Hasselblad. I'll do the same. Medium format cameras. Digital. So now they're not like they used to be like a box. Okay. Now they are actually like a normal, to be honest, like a mirrorless camera, but they are much bigger file sizes. And here we go. That is what it is. It's similar to what an old one used to look like. Okay. But this has a digital back. Okay. So that's inside. And there you go. You got your digital back. But you see this back here, what we would do is we would roll the film onto it and then we would clip it in and you could take it off and put different ones on. Okay. But they're £6,729 just for the body. Even more. And some of them are even more. Okay. But I'm going to give you all of you a challenge in your careers. Okay? Because if you end up using Hasselblad medium format cameras, you are the top of the industry. Okay? Generally like fashion photography, the highest in architectural photography and so on. So here's my challenge for you. In your careers, go for it. So you end up using one of those every day of your life in your job. Because if you get that, you know you're making the highest amount of money you can in photography. You are at the highest of your career. And if any of you can buy one for me, I would love one. Okay. And I had a negative Hasselblad medium format. I bought it secondhand. And it was so heavy, my tripod, the leg went and it smashed. I paid about £1,000 for it years and years ago. Cost me £500 to bleed and fix it because it's mirrors inside. Oh, but they are beautiful cameras to use. So when you go to the likes of Wex and you pick up different cameras and you go, that looks nice. I like the look of that. As a photographer, I like that, and pick it up. That feels good. When you pick up a Hasselblad, they're like a school kid, like, oh, that's the best of all cameras. Okay, so there you go. There's your challenge. Rafi, do you accept my challenge to one day have a Hasselblad and be the best portrait photographer in the world? Spinners, Libby, Brooke. Yes, I like the challenge. Sarah, set challenges, you'll do it. Okay, so anyway, those are your best cameras you can ever have. Let's move on. Okay, we're near enough different. I'm just going to quickly ask you the question. What's the difference between Nikon, Sony, and Canon? What do you reckon? So why would you buy a Canon compared to a Nikon? Why would you buy a Canon compared to a Sony? Or why would you buy a Nikon compared to a Canon or a Sony? Why is that? What do you reckon? Well, you've all gone so quiet. Generally, it's two things. One is the menu settings. Okay, they generally say the first brand you buy is the brand you'll use for the rest of your life. So I've always had Nikon. Okay, I just like the usability of the aperture and the shutter speed. The aperture at the back, the shutter speed at the front. I just like that. Canon, it's on here. The aperture's on the back there. Okay. Generally, Canon have more vibrant colors. Okay, can you see the orange in here compared to the orange on here and the yellow? Canon are more vibrant colors. Nikon, I would normally use for more product photography or architectural photography because I want my colors to be exactly what I've actually got. What I don't want to be doing is photographing a product for a brand and they want the color exactly the same. If I use a Canon, the colors are going to be more vibrant. Does that make sense? Yeah. So if I go with Canon, the colors are more vibrant, and they're nice. I mean, like if I'm photographing nighttime or I'm photographing like in a family portrait studio, Brooke, and things like that, I want the colors nice and vibrant. I want everything. I want the backgrounds really standing out, and so on and so on and so on. Nikon are more for, let's say, landscape photography and natural colors. Okay. Sony, why do you think people go for Sony? Any ideas? I mentioned it earlier on. Film. Their settings in the menu are awful. There's so many settings which make no sense. You've got to play around. It's like they're a pain. I know Sony photographers and they're like, I don't know what half of it does. Okay. But they are brilliant for film. You will see most film photographers who do weddings and things like that, they will have a Sony. They won't have a Nikon. Nikon is not meant to be very good for film compared to the new Z8. The new Z8, the one I've got now, they say it's very good for film. Okay. And it's very good, and it's good photography. But most videographers use Sony. Still a mirrorless camera, but they'll have that thing. Okay. Sony has 3 versions of their camera. So every time you buy a camera, it has 3 versions. One is the photography one is the film version, and the other one is the film dash photography version. I didn't know that. I bought a film version thinking it was the photography version, and then someone said, "Oh wow, you got that film one." I'm like, "It's just the Sony." And he went, "No," he said, "No, you plonker." He said, "Sony have 3 versions of the same camera," and I bought the film one. I use it now. I still use it now for film. I use it for green screen video stuff. I use it for teaching stuff. So it is a good one. It is a good camera. So when you buy a camera, you need to consider what you're also going to use it for. Okay. And the last part of today, was going to watch this video, folks. I mean, we are done a little bit earlier than normal. Okay, I'm just going to make sure the sound's on. Let's have a look at this video. It's just a few more tips on how to use your camera and the benefits of it. Okay. This guy is based in Australia. He goes to a lot of UK events. He travels around the world teaching photography. He's actually quite good. I've seen him at a few events.
Now I want to talk about the 10 common mistakes that I often see photographers making. So if you want to know what these are so you can avoid them, stick around.
Can everyone hear this?
Hi, Paul here from Photo Genius. Welcome to my channel. Now, in the 10 years that I've been teaching photography courses and workshops here in Brisbane, and my 3 years running this channel on YouTube, I've literally helped thousands of people to take better photos and get even more from their digital cameras. So the 10 things that I want to talk about in this video are compiled from my many years of experience. So please make sure you watch this video until the end, because there may only be 1 or 2 things that you might pick up on that may be useful to you, but even if it's just 1 or 2 things, that was worth investing the time, because they're all designed to help you get even more from your camera and of course take better photos. And if you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing. New videos every single week. Okay, let's get into it. Now, image stabilization is a great feature that is often found either in a lens or the camera body, sometimes both. If you've got a Nikon lens and it's got VR written on the side, then that lens has vibration reduction. If you've got a Canon lens and it has IS, that's image stabilization. DSLR cameras don't have it built into them, but mirrorless cameras mostly do. This camera I'm using to record this video is a Nikon. It's got IBIS built in, which is in-body image stabilization. Sony use a similar feature. It's called Steady Shot, as do Olympus and all the other manufacturers. But regardless of what camera you've got, the name, the feature itself is actually really cool, and it's designed to help give you sharper images by helping to eliminate camera shake when you're using your camera handheld. But there is a reason to turn it off. It's often missed, and that's what I want to talk about. If you're taking photos of the sunset or at night and you're using a tripod to keep the camera steady, then don't forget to turn off image stabilization. Otherwise, your camera will be trying to compensate for movement, which of course isn't there because you're using a tripod. Left turned on, the stabilization can actually cause images to look soft. Now, ISO, or ISO as some people like to call it, is one of 3 ways in which we can affect our exposure. If you increase the ISO, effectively you make your picture brighter, and if you decrease the ISO, your picture will get darker. Now, there's more to it than this, but I'm not going to be talking about it in this video. So if you want to know more about ISO, check out the links below this video. What you need to know though is if your pictures are looking very grainy, this is often called digital noise, then it's almost certainly because your ISO is too high. This is effectively distortion. Now, my default ISO is 200, and that's what I recommend for you guys as well. Changing the ISO on the camera is usually pretty easy, and make a note if you've got a Nikon DSLR camera, because your camera may be set to automatic ISO. Now, if it is, I would definitely recommend going into the menu and turning this off. ISO 200 should give you nice, clean looking images. For this sunset image, I shot this with an entry-level Canon camera at ISO 100. The image is nice and sharp and detailed, and if we enlarge the image to 100%, there is minimal digital noise. For the second image, I've increased the ISO to 6400, and the digital noise is much more noticeable. Now, if you're watching this video on a small screen, such as a phone or similar device, you may not notice the difference. But if we enlarge this image to 100%,
Well, look at
clearly
that.
at
There you go.
ISO 6400, the image quality is really poor. So digital noise is much more noticeable the larger the image is displayed. Side by side, these images look very similar. So you can get away with increasing the ISO if your image is only going to be viewed on a small device, maybe on Instagram and social media. But if your intention is to crop the image, print the image, or view the image on a large screen, remember, ISO, keep it low. Now, I do understand why many people try to avoid buying a tripod. Who wants to walk around with a tripod all day? It's large, it's cumbersome, and it takes ages to set up. But a tripod is a must-have bit of kit if you want to take photos in low light, do night photography or long exposures and landscapes. Using a tripod opens up so many more photographic possibilities because you can start to use the slower shutter speeds to create amazing photos that would be hard, if not impossible, to do handheld. Now, of course, if you don't want to carry a full-size tripod around, there are plenty of smaller options available. Two I like to recommend are the Joby GorillaPods with their bendy legs. These are very, very useful. Also, the Manfrotto Pixie Evo is awesome. For more info, check out the links below this video. Now, we all have to start somewhere, and as a beginner, photography can be a bit challenging and daunting at first. There's a lot of things to understand, and one of them is lenses and different lens types. Now, when I'm running my courses, I typically see people turning up with a camera like this Canon camera here and a standard kit lens, which is the 18 to 55mm lens. But when you talk to people, you often find that they've got a second lens that they don't use. This is a telephoto lens. It's often in the back of the bag. Now, I think people tend to feel more comfortable with a smaller lens because it is smaller, more compact, it's lighter. And a lot of people don't really know the benefits of the telephoto lens. All they know is it's a bit heavy and a bit bulky. Well, look, if you're not using your telephoto lens, I think you're missing out. Here I'm using the popular 18 to 55mm kit lens. At 18mm, it gives us a wide field of view, which is great for landscapes like this one. Adjusting the focal length to 35mm and then to the maximum, which is of course 55mm, and we lose that wide view as the subjects in the distance are drawn closer. Switching the standard lens for a telephoto lens, we have a lot more to play with now, starting at 75mm, increasing the focal length as we go 100mm onto 200mm, and then the maximum of course is 300mm, which gets you in really, really close. And once again, comparing images from the two lenses, this is the kit lens set at 18mm. If you look very carefully, there's an orange boat in the distance. Let's now switch to an image taken with the telephoto at its maximum focal length, 300mm, and you can clearly see the boat because this is what those types of lenses are really good at. So of course there's a reason why we can change lenses on a camera like this. Just because this lens is bigger, don't leave it in the camera bag. Use it, have fun with it, discover what it can do. This one's about composition, a very simple way in which we can make our pictures more engaging and make them stand out from the rest. Whilst of course this image of our dog Boo is cute and I love it, it is taken from an adult's perspective looking down. Shooting low is a more interesting shot because now we are seeing from the eye level of the dog. Here taking photos just with my iPhone but getting great results because I'm thinking about my composition. The common theme with all these images is the low angle from which they were taken. Always shooting from eye level is a mistake because your pictures will always look like everybody else's because they're taken from a viewpoint that most of us commonly see all the time. Another very common mistake that I see people making is getting too close with the lens and wondering why it can't focus. That's because every lens has its limitations. Now, just because it has the word macro on the side of this lens, it does not make it a macro lens. What it's actually showing me here is how close I can get rid of this lens before it will be unable to focus. And of course, if I'm too close, all I've got to do is pull the lens back a bit and it should be able to focus just fine. Of course, if you really want to do macro photography and get really close to your subject, then it's better to buy a dedicated macro lens. And if you want to do macro on a budget, consider extension tubes, which is a great way of doing macro lens on a budget, because what you actually do is you use them to turn your existing lens into a macro style lens. I've done a separate video on this. You'll find a link in the description below this video. Now, when taking pictures, you might be using the LCD screen on the back of the camera. It's a great feature of the camera. It's very useful. It's called Live View, but there are reasons why you might want to occasionally switch from using the LCD screen to using the viewfinder. Reason number one is on a bright sunny day, it may be a bit hard to actually see the screen and what you're taking a picture of. It may be difficult to see whether that subject is in focus or out of focus. Number two, when you're holding the camera out and looking at the camera screen, this is a very unsteady way of holding the camera, which can lead to the camera recording your hand movements and your images looking a bit soft or blurry. And reason number three, this screen is a real big drain on the battery. So there's three reasons why you might occasionally want to turn the LCD off and go back to doing things the old-fashioned way, using the viewfinder. Now, if you do find yourself using the viewfinder, do make sure you adjust it so it suits your eyes. There's a little dial wheel on the back of the viewfinder, usually tucked into the top or side, and turning that, you can adjust the viewfinder so you get a nice clear view. Now, for me, when I'm taking pictures handheld, I'm nearly always looking through the viewfinder. But if I'm using my camera on a tripod, then I like to use the Live View. Now, you're not a real photographer unless you're shooting in the manual mode, right? Well, I think that's wrong. Manual mode, I like it.
This is where I stop the video because he goes on about not using manual mode and stick it on aperture priority. No. Okay, what have you got on your finger there, Brooke? No, you're just looking at your finger. Oh, what's that? Okay, so we don't need to watch the rest of the video because I don't agree with what he says. You use manual mode. I mentioned shutter speed priority, but I'd never use aperture priority. So that is it for today, folks. Thank you very much for today. Any problems, let us know. Do remember to keep adding in your off the job, folks. It's meant to be 6 hours per week of off the job. You've got my assignments now on one file. Does everyone here have access to one file? So now you can be doing your assignment for your next lesson, okay? Which is in about 2 weeks' time, I think. Okay. So module 1, which is month 1. Module 2 is month 2. Module 3 is month 3 on my assignments. Okay. Get yourselves outside now. Test your cameras. Learn how to meter read. Okay. Test the apertures. Check the ISO. Check the capability of your ISO. How high can you go with the ISO before the noise kicks in? Okay. Brooke, get your boss to show you how to use studio lighting because you've got studio lighting. Yeah. Rafi, when you get your studio lighting, give us a call. We can have a chat. We can go through it. Yeah. Because you'll be getting your studio lighting soon. We are going to be running some face-to-face days in 2026. It's hard to believe in a couple of months' time. We'll be doing a studio light session. Okay. Can I just double check? So Brooke, Rafi gone. Yeah, Rafi?
Wait, I just want to talk to you like afterwards.
Yeah, that's no problem at all. Can I just double check where you guys are? So Libby, you're in where? Essex, is it?
I'm in East Anglia.
Great Yarmouth, isn't it?
Yeah,
Great Yarmouth. Okay. Brooke, you're in Derbyshire, near Leicester, aren't you?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sarah, are you up north as well?
I'm in Stoke-on-Trent.
You're in Stoke, and then
Yeah.
Rafi, are you London or are you up north?
London.
London. Okay. What I'm trying to think is what I might do is one part of the year we'll do it up north and we'll do one of them down south because the last time we had all my other learners were down south, but I might do two. I might do one up north and one down south, so I haven't got to travel as far. But But we do have access to a studio in Covent Garden. So you ever been to London? Covent Garden's a great place to go out. So we might do one in the Fuji Centre. They've got a studio downstairs in Covent Garden. So you just get a train to St Pancras or King's Cross, and then just get the tube over. Easy. Anyway, so I'll be putting those. I'm looking into those at the minute, and I'll be putting those dates out because then I'll show you how to do studio lighting as well if you're not used to it yourself. But do ask your bosses to show you how to use studio lighting, and then Rafi, I'll show you also how to use it as well. Okay, and also, but you've got freelance photographers you're going to be working with as well, aren't you? So I believe you mentioned you'll be working with some freelance photographers, so they might show you. Anyway, I'll show you anyway. Okay, so that's it today, folks. Thank you very much. Remember to go on OneFile and upload your off the job. Okay, keep those numbers low. Okay, brilliant, folks. Thank you very much, Rafi. If you want to stay on, then chat, and we will. You can ask me that question. Okay.